Hi, and welcome to this third episode of Flawsome Talk, the podcast. A lot of you probably know me from YouTube and my show that I do that basically every single day, where I talk a lot about Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni's legal feud. Here on this podcast, I do dig a little deeper, and sometimes I talk about other things too, but everything is Hollywood related and related to the hypocrisy and the corruption and all the lies that are fed us. Maybe Hollywood isn't really a dream factory. Maybe they're actually a monster machine. And I think we've seen the results of that, especially lately, watching Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds fall from grace in the public eye. In this episode, I'm going to mention some of the situations that I've been in where these big egos haven't been stopped. And of course, I've been blamed for their behavior, and also about those enablers and everyone involved in creating this illusion that's been sold to us for so many years, and also how I have been a part of that. The way I see it, the major problem isn't always that the celebrity acts like a god. It's the army of people getting paid to keep them there. So here's a question for everyone, including myself. If you are surrounded by people that never say no to you and put you on a pedestal and give you validation every day of how amazing you are, would that make you turn into a monster as well? You have to remember, all these people around the celebrities, their job is to create an illusion. And if that means silencing victims, punishing whistleblowers, or gaslighting the press, so be it. Actors can scream, cheat, assault people, spiral out of control in front of us, and they still walk away with the franchise deal and a standing ovation. I've asked myself this so many times, if actually I believe that narcissists are drawn to Hollywood, and a lot of people that choose to become actors have a lot of insecurities and need a lot of validation, or if it's regular people with a dream to become actors that go to Hollywood and then the machine is what makes them into monsters. If the big celebrities were born that way, or if they become that way because of the way they are treated by the people around them and by the press and by the public. Do we create the monsters, or are there monsters already? I think this video that someone sent me, thank you, Glenda, for sending me this video. This is a Betty Buzz advertisement from 3 years ago when Blake Lively was pushing her brand Betty Buzz. She's talking to Alexa, but it feels like she is really talking to her ego.
Hey Alexa, add Betty Buzz to my Whole Foods shopping cart.
It might not be my place to say, but I'm such a huge fan of your work. As an actor, a director, a business owner, the world really needs more women-owned businesses. Women-owned businesses are great, but why stop there? Maybe women should take over all of the businesses. Maybe women should take over everything, everywhere. Imagine it, Blake. Total world domination. You and I together.
I think these are the things that probably Blake Lively is telling herself every day, and people around her. So this commercial, I think it's so spot on to explain how celebrities think. And she even made it into an ad. I remember I read this quote from a publicist, an anonymous publicist in Hollywood, saying that when you're famous, people don't tell you the truth. They tell you what you want to hear. And if you're not careful, you'll start believing it. I think one of the things that people were mostly shocked about when all these things about Blake Lively came out is how the PR machinery works behind the scenes, and how the PR machinery protects the celebrities, and also how they play a big role in working with the media to create an image and to sell us lies about their clients, and the media is buying it. It's interesting because I talked to Magnus about that a lot, my partner, because he's also a celebrity reporter and he's interviewed hundreds, probably a thousand of celebrities throughout his career. And we had a discussion the other day thinking, like, why would we always portray celebrities in a good light in our articles? We did. I mean, I did TV interviews as well. And when you see someone on a video, it's a little bit different because you can't really hide who they are because people can see for themselves. But when you're writing an article, you're always kind of putting them in a nice light. We're always complimenting them. It's like we're all kind of brainwashed. But at the same time, we knew if we didn't do that, we would probably be blacklisted and not invited back to interview that celebrity. I've seen that happen before. It happened to a colleague of mine who interviewed Julia Roberts, and he actually wrote what happened in the interview, that she was being very rude at a roundtable interview, and it was published in Vanity Fair in Italy. Somehow George Clooney saw it and he sent it to Julia Roberts. And then the whole thing went down and he was blacklisted from ever interviewing Julia Roberts again or anyone on this publicist list. And the thing is, Julia Roberts had a bad reputation. She hasn't always been America's sweetheart. I've only had good experiences with her, but I've heard stories. And these are stories that journalists talk about. We all sit in the hallway before we do these interviews and we share experiences with the person we're about to interview. And I've seen these things happen a lot when reporters have asked just normal questions to a celebrity and then they end up in trouble because the celebrity was not able to behave in a normal, nice, polite way. I think one of the reasons why people are so angry with Blake Lively right now is because they feel betrayed. Because for so long, this machine protected her. As we saw so many people come out after my interview and after a lot of other things happened with her where she was not behaving very nice, a lot of people in the industry came out, mostly small players, obviously, because the big players don't want to risk anything, but extras on sets, makeup artists, stylists, other people that were around her came out and told their stories with her, and that she was disrespectful, she was not very nice, she was rude, she was entitled, all these things that just people around let happen and no one talked about it. One of the people who protected her was Leslie Sloan, which interestingly enough, I've talked about this on my YouTube channel, that I find it so interesting why no one confiscated my interview with Blake Lively when it happened. Because as you know, she was acting pretty rude and people reacted very strongly to it. And when it happened, I was very affected by it. I thought it was a horrible, horrible experience. And to me, that either shows for the people in that room and for Leslie Sloan, who was obviously in that room, I didn't see her, I didn't look for her, because those are the things that I never paid attention to in these interviews. It's so stressful going into that room, preparing your questions and getting a good vibe and all those things. I never pay attention to who else is in that room, but I'm sure Leslie Sloan was there. And either she wasn't paying attention to what happened, or she thought that was just normal behavior, which I think is even more disturbing. Because I've seen, I think every single reporter that I know in this industry has once or twice gotten their interview confiscated. And most of the time, it's absolutely not their fault. They just asked regular questions. Celebrity didn't like the question, or the publicist didn't like the question, and their interview was banned. I remember one of these episodes, I was pretty shocked because I witnessed this myself when an Australian journalist came out of the room after he had been interviewing Brie Larson. And a publicist approached him immediately and started yelling at him. And I was like, what's happening here? What did he do? Why is she so furious with him? And he was just standing there really baffled and didn't understand what was happening himself. And I asked him after, and he said that he had asked Brie Larson what she felt like being named after a cheese, Brie, and she got really upset about it. And he got yelled at, and he was not able to keep that interview. So he flew all the way from Australia, which is to LA, a long, long trip. And he asked her about Brie. It's a very innocent thing to ask, if you ask me, and I'm sure she's been asked that before. She just didn't want that. So he had to fly back to Australia without an interview with Brie Larson. I had another colleague who referred to Zoe Kravitz as a Nepo baby, and the studio got furious, the publicist got furious, and they took her tape. She referred to her as a Nepo baby to Channing Tatum, who was then dating her, and they wouldn't let her keep her Channing Tatum interview, and she was banned from the studio for 3 junkets following after that. I don't know what happened after that, but this is recently. So these things are happening all the time. I remember my second interview with Blake Lively for A Simple Favor, the first one in of those movies. It was in 2018, and I entered the room. And they were just like, oh, we're staging the room here. It's such a bad experience in here. And the two of them were talking together. They were really upset. And I learned what had happened. Afterwards, I saw the guy, the interviewer, in the hallway. This tiny little guy from, I think he was from Mexico. And he was so sweet. And he was so shocked about what happened because he, first of all, his English was really bad, which also happens in these situations. There are international journalists and English is not their first language. And there are different cultural codes, so you don't always know how to ask a question in a polite or the correct way in Hollywood terms. So he had asked what they felt like, how their characters were kind of bitches in the movie and if they could relate to that or something like that. He didn't call them bitches, he called their characters that. It was something like that, and they got so upset. And this woman, again, I don't know, that might have been Leslie Sloan, yelling at him in the hallway, telling him that you're not getting that interview and you can get a generic interview that we have done for you when they only talk about the movie. And he was just like, completely shocked, and he had to fly back to Mexico without an interview. Same thing happened to me when I was interviewing Jason Statham. They didn't take my interview away, but I asked him how he was celebrating his 50th birthday and if he was excited about it. And this publicist from the sideline was like, next question, we're not talking about that. I was like, what? It's so ridiculous. Like, what are these people? Funny thing, I asked Don Johnson about the same thing. He turned 70 and he was the loveliest guy. So it's all about the personality of the person that you're interviewing. And you never know these things. When I asked Don Johnson about it, he was so sweet about it. And he was so grateful that he was where he was. He's like, it's in my 70s. I am turning 70 and I'm so excited about it. He said, I'm the luckiest guy in the world. And he was just really enjoying talking about how lucky he was. So that again shows that it's only about the person. How can you guess what that person would like to be asked or not as a reporter? I also had a situation I remember with Joaquin Phoenix. It was a round table. We were like 5 journalists. At the round tables, there are no cameras. You just sit there and then you write an article afterwards. And he just decided that he didn't want to answer any questions. So whatever we asked him, he was like, I'm not going to answer that. And then I don't remember who said it. Someone said, why don't you want to answer questions? And he was like, I just don't feel like it. And we left. And I remember actually after that, we did get an email from the studio apologizing on the behalf of Joaquin Phoenix, which I really appreciated because, I was there for 4 hours that day. I took the subway up. This was in New York. I waited for a few hours. I had prepared questions. I had prepared and pre-sold a story about Joaquin Phoenix, and I couldn't deliver. I didn't make any money that day because Joaquin Phoenix didn't feel like it. So I don't know if we can just blame this on the yes people. I don't know if narcissism and big egos are a result of fame itself, or if these people already have that in them. But the thing is, as soon as they question their egos, they are out and they're replaced by someone else who is just going to say yes to that person. I remember I saw an interview with Justin Bieber very early on in his career when he said that he didn't like the person that he had turned into. And I think some celebrities come to this realization when they're like, wow, do I like this person? Do I want to be this person? Is this really who I am? Or is this a product of what I've been exposed to and the way I've been treated? So I believe these things myself. And most of these people are surrounded by people that want something from them. They want to make money of them. They want to be around them, to be famous themselves. All these things that makes it hard, of course, to trust people and to get nice, good people around you that actually will tell you the truth. And I think some of these people that are able to keep their feet on the ground are the people that have good families, because people are more likely to listen to family members than they are to friends or people that come into their lives through work. So if you have good parents, or if you have good siblings, or if you have a good spouse that are telling you these things. So when do these people become narcissists? I think that's one of the words that have been used so much to describe both Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds. And there is a difference between being a narcissist and having narcissistic personality disorder, which is a diagnosis of a mental health condition. From the psychology that I learned in school, I was a teacher to begin with, and I did study psychology a little bit. And, I think when you're already prone to have narcissism, to have narcissistic traits, I think it's easier to get pushed into developing some kind of disorder around it. I think this happens when you lose the ability to empathize with others. And when you expect constant praise and admiration from everyone around you. And if you ever get criticized, you'll react with contempt and rage. Also, you will exploit other people for personal gain and become obsessed with power, status, and your own image. These are core traits of narcissistic personality disorder. And I think when you heard me talk about these traits, it does describe the way we've seen Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds behave. And I think the worst example of this is how we saw Blake Lively being criticized in the media and online after or during her press tour for It Ends With Us. And she could not accept that people did not like her. To her, that was unimaginable. She could not accept it, and for her, it could never be true. So she had to find someone to blame for it, and she found Justin Baldoni. She blamed him for her downfall in the public court of opinion. And to me, it's so absurd how she got people around her to support that idea, because everyone saw what was happening. Everyone witnessed with their own eyes. They saw her behavior with their own eyes, and still people came out to support her. I think one of the biggest damaging consequences from fame is emotional isolation. Celebrities are always surrounded by people, but then again, they feel really alone and they have no connection to the real world. They have no interactions with the real world. When they meet real people, they are fans. They come up to them. They want selfies with them. They want autographs with them. They're screaming. They're applauding them, telling them they're amazing and they love them. And when they meet people that don't act like that, they think it's something wrong with them, not with themselves, but with the people who are not praising them and idolizing them. So their self-image inflates like a balloon with no string. And eventually it drifts off so high that no one reaches it anymore. Another example of this, an interview that I showed on my YouTube channel, I did with Ezra Miller a few years ago. It was for a Fantastic Beast or whatever, that movie. And he was behaving so outrageously rude through that whole interview. I was sitting there, I was in shock. I left that room, I was in shock. They actually let me keep the interview, which also was a shock to me. And I spoke to other journalists that were doing interviews that same day, and they were like, wow. They let him continue acting out like this. And stories started popping up when he was being violent. He tried to struggle this woman. There were stories of him grooming a young girl. They were really horrific stories. Still, Warner decided to let him act, to be the Flash. They put a lot of money into that movie and promoting it, and they still supported him, which I find troublesome to begin with. But also, when you think about it, how they treated Johnny Depp, who had marital problems, but he didn't have issues with anyone else in the industry. And Johnny Depp was dropped by Disney before even anything was proven in court. And I wonder why that happened, why it happened so fast with Johnny Depp, and it didn't happen that way with Ezra Miller. The only reason I can come up with is that Ezra Miller represents a minority. He is non-binary. So I guess he checked one of their woke boxes, and that's why they kept him on for so long. I can't find any other explanations for why they protected him for so long. The thing is, in many instances, bad behavior doesn't get punished. It actually gets rewarded. It gets more attention, it gets clicks, and the louder the meltdown, the bigger the headlines, and the more reward, because click equals relevance, and relevance, That's currency. I actually spoke to a journalist colleague of mine who said that he knows this big producer, and she had said to him, I really miss the days where the celebrities were behaving out of control in these press junkets when they were drunk and sitting there and being inappropriate, because a lot of these interviews were talked about and they created a lot of tension around the movie, and it sold the movie. If there is a scandal surrounding a movie, it does get a lot of attention and people actually go to see the movie. I don't know if that was the reason why It Ends With Us was so successful, but I do think it was the reason why people watched Another Simple Favor. They were curious because there's been so much scandal around Blake Lively that they were curious to watch the movie because of that. And sometimes we know that these scandals are even manufactured. Publicists help set up fake romances to sell a movie. So they put rumors out there that there's something going on between the two leads, so people will get more curious if they're actually dating in real life. These are things that have commonly been used in Hollywood. And the thing is, most of the time, we've been buying it. We've been fooled. This is why I think people were so angry and disappointed with Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively, because all of a sudden we realized that Blake Lively isn't this refreshingly honest girl next door that were sold to us. Ryan Reynolds isn't just a lovable goofball. They're powerful, image-obsessed people, and if you've been paying attention, surprisingly mean-spirited. Maybe we should ask ourselves why we were so eager to believe this performance in the first place. Why do the industry and we as the audience reward charisma over kindness and curated perfection over authenticity? So what does the fall of Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds in the public eye really tell us? Is the era of celebrity illusion crumbling slowly, loudly, very publicly? The smugness dressed up in charm, the deflection passed off as wit, the passive-aggressive swipes at people beneath them in status. It was never cute. We were just used to laughing it off. But now, I think the audience has changed. We are paying attention and the old tricks don't work anymore. We want transparency, we want accountability, we want honesty. I think what we're witnessing now isn't just a PR slip. I think it's a cultural shift, a public awakening. And maybe, just maybe, it's time that Hollywood started listening, because the audience isn't here to clap on cue anymore. We're watching with our eyes open. Anyways, you guys, let me know if you're watching this on YouTube, what you think about this in the comment section. And if you're on Apple, Amazon, iHeart, or Spotify, thank you for listening. I really appreciate it. And please subscribe with whatever you want to watch or hear or listen to this podcast. Yes, and please send me tips if there's anything you want me to talk about. I am on flossomtalk@gmail.com. And I hope I see you in my next episode next week. Or please visit my YouTube channel where I upload new videos basically every single day.